Storytime. My sister and I were staying in an old hotel in the middle of rural Montana. The building had been in use since the 1800s, and it was one of my sister's favourite places. But the night we stayed there, I was kept up all night by someone pacing around on the hardwood floor in the room above ours. The next morning, I asked my sister how she'd managed to get any sleep, and she said she hadn't heard a sound. Besides, the rooms above ours were carpeted and empty. The hotel staff confirmed this and also mentioned that the upstairs of the building had once been used as an old ballroom. Was this a case of badly behaved children or something else? One morning, I was with my mum in the bathroom of our house while she was getting ready. She was acting a little distant, so I asked her if everything was okay, and she told me about something that had happened the night before. At about 2 a.m, she had been woken up by a strange noise, so she got up and went to see where it was coming from. It seemed to be coming from the bathroom, and as she walked in, she saw a hairdryer plugged in and turned on in the middle of the floor. She thought it was strange, but that it was probably just one of the kids, and went back to bed. About an hour later, she was woken up again by the same sound, but this time when she went to check, it was coming from downstairs. Once again, the hairdryer was in the middle of the floor, but this time in the downstairs bathroom. As she's telling me this story, I turn to look at the closet in her bathroom, and as I do, the entire light bulb smashes into pieces. This is why you should never try using a Ouija board. My friends and I decided to play with a Ouija board after work in our office and spoke to a girl named Quinn. She didn't say much but seemed friendly enough, but when I mentioned my girlfriend, she got super mad and protective of me. When it got to 2 a.m, we said goodbye to her, but about a week later, in the middle of the night, the office block that we worked in burnt down. It creeped us all out, so a week later we used the Ouija board again near a lake and asked for Quinn. When we got through to her, we asked if she started the fire, to which she responded, yes. About 2 weeks later, I was driving to my girlfriend's house with the board in the back of the truck. I didn't know it at the time, but my girlfriend was in fact cheating on me. But I guess Quinn knew because I lost control of the truck and flipped it upside down. When the cops arrived to make sure I was okay, they reminded me what road I was on. Route 666, Virginia. You guys asked for it, here's another story time. One night, a woman was driving home late at night from dinner with some of her friends. As she was driving, she noticed a pair of headlights in her rearview mirror approaching the car. As this car pulled up behind her, she glanced and saw the driver switch the turn signal on as if it was about to pass, before suddenly swerving back behind her and pulling up dangerously close to her, flashing its lights. The frightened woman struggled to keep her eyes on the road and finally turned onto the exit. Through every stoplight and turn, the car followed her, still flashing its lights until she pulled into her driveway. She figured her only hope was to make a dash into the house and call the police, but as she jumped out of the car, so did the driver of the car behind her, and he screamed, "Lock the doors and call 911. When the police arrived, it was revealed that as the man in the car had pulled up behind her, his headlights illuminated the car and he saw a silhouette of a man in the back seat reaching to grab the woman. You asked for it, it's time for another creepy story time. My mum keeps a lot of old toys in our attic and our bedrooms are all on the floor below. One night, my sister got home late from a night shift at work. As she went into her room to get ready for bed, she started to hear music playing faintly, but couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So she went and woke my mum up to help her figure out what it was. Together they realised that the music was coming from the attic. Once they had mustered up the courage to go and see where it was coming from, they discovered that it was a toy right at the bottom of our toy box. The batteries had to have been at least 25 years old, and nobody had been in the attic for months. It had started playing completely by itself. It's time for another story time. I used to drink in a pub down in town. It was very cosy and typical for Yorkshire where I live. Every time I went in, there was an old man who the locals referred to as Smiler, who always stood around the corner from the seating just outside the ladies' toilets. He was named this because of the huge vacant smile he always had on his face. This man had been there every time I'd been into the pub for over 20 years, no matter what time of day I went in. One day I went into the pub and the bar staff let me know that Smiler had sadly passed away. I had a few drinks with my friends and got up to go to the toilet, and as I walked around the corner, there was Smiler turning to face me. I was completely shocked, but walked to the door and said, "Hi, Smiler," to which he responded as usual with a nod, and I went into the toilet. I checked my lipstick and went back out, but Smiler was nowhere to be seen, and I haven't seen him since. Okay, it's time for another creepy story time. My parents had me in their early 20s and ended up getting divorced when I was less than a year old. I often spent the night at my grandma's house on my mum's side since my mum didn't have much money at the time. I don't remember this happening, but my mother and grandmother tell me the story like it was yesterday. When I was really little, I would come out of my room and tell everyone that there was a lady that stood over my crib at night and watched me sleep. Since I was so little, everyone thought I was just making up stories and it was my imagination or I was just dreaming. This continued on for months, and one day my mum and grandma were looking through a photo book, and as they were just flipping through the pages, she lands on a photo of my dad's mum, my other grandma, and I pointed right to her and said, "That's the lady that stands over my crib at night." I had never met her, and she died years before I was born. It's time for another creepy story time. When I was 15, I visited Toronto and stayed with a family who lived in a huge block of flats. Late one night, I'd been out and travelled by subway back to the apartment block at about midnight. I got into the elevator, but I hadn't been staying there for very long at this point and forgot which floor the apartment was on, so I just took a random guess. The elevator, however, started going up and down between random flats as if many people had called for it on different floors, and after a while it stopped at the 10th floor. But when the doors opened, the corridor was pitch black and there was nothing there, not even a door. I hit the door close button as fast as I could on the elevator and was so afraid that I decided to just go down to the lobby and climb the emergency stairs. As I was climbing, I remembered that the apartment was on the 12th floor, so I just climbed all the way up. This story wouldn't be particularly weird, except for the fact that when I arrived and checked the time, the clock said 3 a.m, and I distinctly remember getting into the lift at 1 a.m. I honestly don't know if I just completely lost track of time, or whether I entered some parallel universe.